So let me begin. So the basic topic that I'm trying to make all of us aware is about deciphering landscapes through miniature paintings. As you can see, there is this very beautiful painting where you could see Radha and Krishna. They're sitting into the forest somewhere, and there is a lot of foliage in and around them. They're sitting at the bed of the leaves, which is made out of Ashoka tree, and you could see some foliage with beautiful flowers, and everything looks so rhythmic and in sync with this particular current picture that you see. And there is a quote which I specifically wanted all of you all to read, is that everything in this world has a hidden meaning. So how and where this particular quote would be applied in this presentation, we would be talking about that very short. So as you all see, as you all have seen in the particular video, that these paintings, basically it is called as Pahadi miniature paintings. Obviously with the name, it is very clear that these paintings were made in the hilly regions of India. So we are particularly talking about the region of Kangra, Guler, Bisholi and Chamba areas, which are at the lower foothills of Himalayas. And the states particularly would be Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir. What were these paintings? Who painted them? Why are they so important for us to know as an artist as well as another profession? Is something which I had tried gathering into this presentation, and I hope that you all would gain essence from this. So firstly, these paintings, looking at their size, these are almost like 15 centimeter by 25 centimeter or 20 centimeter size paintings. So because of this small size and the creative genius of artists, these paintings were produced in large numbers. They were produced almost like one artist would paint almost 50, 60, or in a set of 100 as well, depending upon what kind of subject that he was supposed to paint. Now, because of the size of this painting and the paper on which it was made, handmade papers, it was never framed or hung onto the walls. These were always kept stacked together, like in this image, if you could see. This is a stack of almost 50, 60 paintings which is kept together. And these paintings were removed out from time to time, as in when there is a special occasion. You imagine the time in which these paintings were made. These were in the medieval era, and when there was no source of entertainment, what we have today in current situation. Meeting people, understanding the different art forms, and sharing their thoughts about art was something which was their own pastime. So these paintings were removed only at the occasions of special festivals, or when some special person has come to meet. Now, there is a special way to look at these paintings. So these paintings are actually held at a hand at a distance of 12 to 14 inches away from the eyes. So like as if you're holding a mirror in your hand, you view these particular paintings. Now, what happens is, once you view these paintings at such a close distance, there is a sort of an intimate experience that you have with the painting. It is something which is very different from what we see in terms of canvas painting nowadays, where the viewer is sometimes very close to the painting, sometimes he's very far away, and he gets the different attributes of the painting. But this one particularly has a very intimate experience with the viewer. What one requires to do in such kind of a situation is to linger around these paintings, linger around and take the essence of these paintings by being very patient. So you with the haste, you could never actually understand these paintings. The characters which were painted in these paintings were so real that you could almost hear them converse. You could hear what they are trying to say, either through their body language or either to with the help of the movement of their eyes, or some sort of physical movements which are shown in each of these paintings. So everything in these paintings appeared to be quite rhythmic in its overall appearance. The artist also worked upon, either on natural exaggeration or abstract of human emotions. So depending upon the mood of that particular painting, they painted the faces, and even the surroundings around the paintings played an important role. What artist did in this situation was he just tried to weave in and around the narratives. Narratives is basically in the form of text or poetries through which he has started making these paintings. What we as a participant or viewer in this particular experience of seeing these painting is required is to bring in that utsaha into the act of viewing. Unless and until you don't feel good about watching these paintings, the painting won't reciprocate. It won't talk back to you. So these are some images at your right hand side where how the painting is to be held in the hand, and how it was stacked and what kind of colors and techniques were used. Particularly in this presentation, I won't be talking about the technical aspects of how these paintings were made, but I would be definitely focusing upon the ideas which the artist wanted to portray in each of these paintings. So yes, so we are currently talking about the era which is termed as the medieval era. If you look at the first image at the top, it shows the chronological account of eras with respect to Indian paintings. So if you see, there is a huge amount of uh, uh, you know uh, uh, time which has passed upon for us to reach to what we call as Pahadi paintings, which you can see in the second image, particularly talking about medieval era. We are talking about basically 17th and 18th century, uh, and there is a gamut of uh, cultural exchange and artistic collaborations which took place before arriving into the Pahadi paintings, which is almost still for us 200 years old, 200 to 50 years old situation. So what does these paintings try to say is something which I will be talking. Before going into the paintings, it is very important to understand uh, the, the lineage, the history, or the timeline of these paintings, how it evolved. So starting from the 15th to 16th century, all of us know that Mughals had come to India and they took over. What they brought back with them was this peculiar style of Persian miniature paintings along with them, and that was somewhere one of the source of inspiration for the generations to follow with respect to the Pahadi paintings. Uh, what happened is once the Mughal empire started to fall, in the late 17th century, uh, we see that there was a lot of exodus of artists and painters from Delhi. Now, what does that mean is that during Mughal time, in Mughal courts, we had a lot of these artists very freely painting their war scenes and painting the portraits of the emperors. But at the fall of the Mughal Empire, definitely the artists thought that they would lose the job. So many of them had left Delhi. They left Delhi and they were seeking patronage at different courts. So when I say courts here is something which is to do with the karkhanas, is what they used to call. So these are artistic karkhanas where the artists were employed to paint for the emperor. So the kings or the emperors were the patrons who gave artists the work of painting for their kingdom. So obviously, at the end of 17th century, many of these artists were seeking different courts because they thought that after post-Mughal Empire, we need to find something for their job. So what happened in 16th and 17th century? Many of them landed in Rajput kingdoms. Uh, Rajput kingdoms, if you can see in this small map, it is highlighted here. And some of them had gradually moved towards these small principalities in Himachal Pradesh. So they moved from this Rajput to the lower hills of Himalayas, where we actually are calling it as Pahadi region. So Pahadi region, like I earlier told, these are the kingdoms of Buler, Mandu, Bhasholi, Kangra, Chamba. So what happened is here the local kings of these Pahadi regions gave patronage to these artists who used to paint the miniature paintings. Later on, as the years passed by, now because it has a Mughal influence, it had a Rajput influence, and then reaching into the Pahadi region, even the painting styles developed a certain peculiarity. Like in Mughal influence, we find the treatment of landscape to be very predominantly seen. In Rajput style, there was a boldness to the entire character of the paintings. The drawings were bold. They used quite bright colors, which is very obvious in the Rajasthan and Gujarat region. And what happened in Pahadi style was there was a lot of delicacy in terms of delicate touch of lines and colors, which of course all of us would be experiencing in the further slide. Uh, it is in the 17th and 18th century that actually the Pahadi art got flourished. Now, when I say this art got flourished, it means that it was at its peak of paintings being made by the local artists for the local kings. And if you could see this image, which is the image of the natural beauty at the low hills of Himalayas. And if you are an artist in this particular region, imagine what kind of inspiration you would get from this particular space to paint. And you're completely in the lap of very picturesque place, and the art definitely which was made in this areas reflected this natural beauty in all of their paintings. Uh, and this is how there was this beginning of Pahadi courts finally, where the artist painted uh, uh, mostly the stories of legendary Radha and Krishna's love. So now there is a reason for this particular paintings to be painted in Pahadi region. As you know that Mughals, with the Mughals and before that the Sultanate kingdoms had brought in the culture of Islam into India. And as all of us know, India being the Hindu country, there was this resistance to this new culture which was brought into the India. So in a very short while, I would be talking about why the paintings had only Radha and Krishna as their main subject, and I would be telling you the reason of this also. What happened is once it flourished in 17th and 18th century, at the 19th century onwards, there was a decline in the Pahadi school of miniature paintings. This was probably because of the invasion of the Gorkha tribes of Nepal coming in, and there was a lot of instability which was there in this particular regions, and there was a lot of Sikh dominance which was seen, as a counter effect to the Gorkhas, and that got reflected. Into the paintings of the Pahadi region. So this turmoil, actually, what it did to the India is that a lot of these local artists from the Pahadi region started migrating towards the Lahore and Amritsar. So there was a cultural shift into these painting style, which was clearly seen. Now, if you ask what is the condition of these paintings in today's condition, in today's time, is that a lot of these medieval paintings are on the verge of extinction. Of course, we could get the reprints in the form of souvenirs. We could see some NGOs working for it. But yes, it is definitely getting very extinct because of lot many reasons, which again we would be discussing further. So before we start talking about these paintings, I told you about the Islam entering into India and the cultural shift which the people started experiencing. Uh, this was a time when we had a movement called as Bhakti movement. Uh, what this movement was basically, it was the use of the devotion, which is the bhakti bhav of the people to achieve salvation, which is the moksha, which was the predominant component of the bhakti movement. And obviously, to teach this particular kind of devotion, there was lot many of these saints who had evolved as in messengers of the bhakti. And there was this transition of life which these messengers taught from normalcy to the enlightenment. Like it is, I've written in Hindi, that is adhyatmic gyan, which the people could attain by practicing the rituals. And Bhakti movement, basically, it had started in 7th century in South India, and slowly, steadily, it started spreading all over India and mostly towards the northward side of the country. What it did was it provided a base for development of regional literature and languages. So a lot of these regional languages started developing. A lot of poems and literature was started being made in these particular, regional languages. The spread of Islam in India during medieval times basically started with the counter reformation, or sort of a which was required at the Indian society at that particular time, where Hindu people started embracing their Hindu society and started reforming their own cult to that extent that people start following their own religion with the great respect, and not go and follow some other religion which had invaded India. What this also did was there was a great importance which was given to both men and women in the society. And it was also a start of a lot many scriptures being written during this time, like Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavad Puran and Padma Purana. All these were started to be written in Sanskrit, and a lot of these were translated and retranslated later on during the coming years. And there was this growing popularity of the poets and saints which came into the society, which were actually the transmitters of these literature and poems to the commonest of the people. And that is how this vernacular literature, which was being spreaded across to the commonest of the people, we find that the Pahadi paintings getting their own themes from this particular movement. And that is why, like if you see here, Bhagavad Puran, Geet Govind, Rasamanjari, and Rasika Priya, these are some of the literatures written during this time. And these provided the themes for the artist to uh, paint their paintings at this time. So before I start with Radha Krishna's paintings, I wanted to show you all this very interesting painting which you could see on your screen. This is basically called as the Hiranya Garbha. Now, many of you all must be knowing this story, that there was a sort of a competition between Brahma and Vishnu to, just to understand that who is more superior to to each other. What happened in that case was Shiva decided to take the form of a shivling, and he uh, rose in the form of shivling to the top in the sky and to the bottom into the ground. And both Vishnu and Brahma decided to reach to its end. So Brahma went upwards in the sky, and Vishnu went downward into the ground. And Vishnu, being very what you can say tired at the end of this particular task, decided that there's no end to this shivling. So he came back onto the ground zero. But Brahma played a tactic. He went upwards, and he saw a flower descending down from the sky, and he asked that flower, "From where have you fallen?" So the flower says that it has fallen from the top of the shivling, and that is where Brahma plays this tactic, and asks the flower to come with him to Vishnu, and tell lie that it has you have been plucked from top of the shivling, and you have to say this to the Vishnu when he asks. So this is something which actually happened, and Vishnu gets pretty much agitated on Brahma speaking lie, because he knows that there is no limit to this particular shivling, and that is how he cuts his fifth head, and that is how Brahma is seen mostly with four heads, and there's no temple which worships Brahma except one, which is there in Pushkar. So the reason why I'm telling you this story in the backdrop is because the actual story of this painting begins just after that. So what happens is, post this particular what you can say a story, there was a lot of speculations about from where to start with designing a new world. So after the Mahapralay is something which happens after the end of every yug. Okay, and once the yug starts to end, there is this big chaos or Mahapralay which happens, and everything gets back to zero. So after the Mahapralay, there was darkness which was seen everywhere, and everything was in state of a deep sleep. And that is when the Swayambhu, which is the self-manifested being, it gets arose into the form which was beyond senses. So what the Swayambhu created was, it created primordial waters first. So there was water which was created, which had no end to it. From where it starts, from where it ends, there were no waves. It was all concentric whirlpools and eddies which were created, like the giant ring of time. So if you see in this painting, the artist, to show that the water has no end at this particular situation, has painted the water in the form of rings. Like how you cut the tree's trunk and you see these rings, these actually depicts the unlimited time which has passed on. So that is how the artists have tried to show the very difficult to understand concept of primordial waters, which is the water which has no start and no end. And what you can see in the center is this golden room, which is the placed inside at the center, which is quite unmoving. It is like Hiranyagarbha. It is called as golden egg. It is believed that the Swayambhu entered into this particular egg and started dividing this particular egg. So how life started, if you want to know, then this egg started divided into two. Then this second egg started dividing into four, and that is how this world was created. So it is also termed as the universal germ in most of the Puranas that we see. So why am I giving you so much of a backdrop to this particular painting is that what is interesting to know about this painting, which was painted almost 200 years, 250 years ago, is that once you lay this painting onto the ground, on the paper, the center like appears to be very dark. It appears to be like brownish in color, as you can see. But this is the second part of this. Once you hold the painting, like I told at the very start, like these paintings are to be, viewed from a distance, holding it in hand at certain position. You see that there is some sort of a glisten which comes to the painting. And this, the artist has thought that the sun has entered into this Hiranyagarbha. The sun, with its energy, germinates the seeds into, the different other forms of eggs, and how it then gives rise to the world. So what is interesting to know about is that how the artist has captured the effect of a hologram, into the painting, and how he has played with the very contrasting element, one which is unmovable and one which is constantly changing. So he has shown movement and stability all in one painting, and the main magic begins once you hold this painting in your hand. So this is why I chose to tell this particular story and show this painting to you. Now, before we move on to Radha and Krishna paintings, which is ultimately the main focus of this presentation, a little bit more about one literature which gave rise to this particular paintings is called as Geet Govind. So Geet Govind is basically it is a Sanskrit poem which was written by Jaydev, who was the poet of it, and it was written in 12th century. What this Geet Govind did is it had bridged the gap between art and literature. Many of artists got inspired by Geet Govind, and they started interpreting this text into various different forms. What was the main theme of this literature was the divine love of Radha and Krishna, which represents the basic Indian attitude towards love. Okay. Now, in this particular text, there is a vast emotional range which the poet deals with to explain the universal experience of love. And the main characters, like I told earlier, Radha and Krishna, has to face different emotional challenges. Somewhere they see desire, somewhere they see hope, somewhere they see pride, and disappointment, anger, and reconciliation. A lot of these things are experienced in this text. So what it represents, it not only represents the experience of love and longing, but also the humanity's quest and struggle for unity with divine grace. So there's a philosophical touch to this. I will be explaining you all this particular thing with the help of a very easy graphics which I have put in next slides. To understand this humanity's quest and struggle for unity with divine grace might seem to be very difficult to digest at current moment, but it has a deeper meaning. I'm sure once you understand the meaning of each of these words, you would be able to enjoy these paintings the way I had enjoyed in the process of making this presentation. What it did, this Geet Govind, was it stirred the mind of a lot of these readers, artists, dancers, musicians to such a passion that they themselves became the beat or the song in this Geet Govind.